Datsun 240Z is one of my very favorite cars. What made the Z car special was that it outperformed cars that cost 2 or 3 or 4 times more. And this was very capable out-of-the-box sports car. It's kind of everything that you want in a sports car, and that, for me, is what makes the Z car a little bit different than some of the other, Japanese cars we work on. We built a lot of 240Zs here at JDM Legends, and I think we've got another one on the way. Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Good, good.
Good, so I wanted to get in touch with you and kind of follow up on the Z project we've been talking about and kind of talk about exactly what we're starting with and where you want to see the car at. Daniel's a customer that contacted us regarding a potential restoration of his Datsun 240Z.
So I have kind of an extensive background with just different type of cars, but never anything sort of in the classic era. So me and my wife immediately fell in love with the Zs. It just has this beautiful, timeless look.
The Datsun 240Z is the American version of what was referred to as the Nissan Fairlady Z in Japan.
I think we were a little bit ambitious. We thought we could maybe build this car out of our garage. And so we took the car apart, we stripped it down to bare metal, painted to where it is right now.
Daniel's got the story that I hear from a lot of customers. They want to restore a car, but once you get into it and you find how big the project can actually be, sometimes these projects can get a little bit overwhelming.
I have some initial ideas of kind of what I envision. If we can try to keep it, as sort of JDM and authentic as possible, I can just give it that nice original look down to the badging. I mean, I want the cool double stacked exhaust, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of handing it over to you guys at this point.
Okay. That being said, you wanted to stick with carburetors on the car?
Yeah, I think so. There's something about the way these carbureted motors sound and they smell that I just want to kind of soak in all that visceral experience, which I don't think you really get with modernized motors.
Looks like body has been painted white on the car. Car's been cut for the over fenders.
The over fenders kind of got mounted, but there obviously is no manual,
Right, yeah, so, those are a little bit difficult. They're very vague as placement-wise, yeah. So I think that's one of the first things we'll look into here. I'm excited about it. We're going to build you something cool, Daniel.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to it.
Okay, Daniel, we'll keep in touch.
Okay, cool. Talk to you soon.
Bye. On this 240Z, we're going to try and stay true to the original Japanese Fairlady model. A triple carb setup will improve performance. We're adding a twin pipe exhaust just like the original. To get the proper wheel to fender clearance, we're going to move the over fender down. Overall, we're going to take this 240Z and transform it into something more powerful, better handling, and cleaner looking than it ever left the factory. We're basically starting with a shell here, so we've definitely got our work cut out for us on this Datsun. The first thing we're going to get to is the fenders. All right, Mauricio, so this is the next one we got here. Another Z car.
All right.
When Josh and I had put the suspension on the car, we lowered it down and had noticed that the rear of the car was sitting, pretty low about where we wanted. We had no fender gap in the rear, and in the front I could full on, fit a fist in between the wheel and the front fender. What had happened is he had placed the over fender about 2 inches too high on the fender. So instead of being able to just simply move it down, we had to add material from another fender. Because it needed to be moved so far down, you can see that that would have all been just open space. So in order for me to have something to attach this to again, what I ended up doing is I had this scrap fender here that the only good part of it was the part I actually used. And I've tacked it into place now. So we now have the ability to move that fender down, and now it's sitting where it should be.
The metal on the Zs are a lot thinner than American muscle cars. My biggest concern is that these fenders warp so easy, so I just have to do a good finish on it. I'm not too worried about the metal work, but matching this paint is definitely going to be a challenge.
Is there anything that really stands out to you on this car?
I am noticing different colors on the body and the front fenders. It's a little concerning because if we're going to be doing the front fenders, we have to make sure we can blend properly so we get the right match on the body.
Right. I really love working with Mauricio because he is such an absolute perfectionist, but to me, white is white.
It's nothing we can't address.
I trust you'll get it right, man.
I'm pretty excited to take it back to the shop and get this going.
Cool, man. Well, let's get these fenders off and we'll load them up.
Sweet.
Mauricio's going to take the fenders back to his shop and get started. Here at my shop, we're going to tackle the wiring and the engine bay. First, we need to get the wire harness installed, and then we'll get the spark plug wires in.
A lot of the time, people have issues with stuff not working, and they just hack and splice and vampire tap everywhere. I appreciate design, I appreciate thought being put into something outside of, let's just build whatever and just shove it out. Even like parts that you'll never see, I like to make look nice, really is satisfying for me. That's essentially the final product.
Cleaning up the wiring on this car is one part of the job, but we're also going to be adding some power. Check it out, man. We got the carbs from Japan.
OER45s.
Yeah, this is the first set of OERs we're doing. Hopefully we have Japanese precision here, but then we also have Weber internals. So from the factory, this car would have a dual carb setup, and we're moving to a triple carb setup, which not only looks really cool, but it's also going to make power as well.
So the reason why I think these are super cool is, obviously it's an authentic Japanese carburetor, which is what we're into. It's cool to have the external adjustable floats. All of the hardware, it's all zinced really well. It looks really nice. It's a nice finish. It comes to the fun part, which will be making this heat shield.
And keeping the heat off the carbs is critical, so this is something that is absolutely necessary for a triple carb setup. Part of the really big problem there is how much heat the header makes, and the fact that the carburetors sit directly above that. So what I need to do is fabricate a heat shield to deflect the heat away from the carbs. The way that I modify each one of these a little bit differently is based off of the header design and the carburetor design. So on this one here, we're going to make the heat shield just a little bit longer so we can get the coverage all the way across there. So I first start out by making the template in cardboard, and then I transfer that to stainless steel. I like to use stainless steel for these because it's highly durable, it doesn't corrode, and it's less prone to cracking like aluminum would be. So I think it's a perfect material for this. I don't want a straight 90, just enough to keep it off the headers there. Let's see what that fits like. That looks like about the right angle I'm going for, just enough to keep it off of the header. There's one more piece I'm gonna lay on the bottom here. This is some straight up NASA space shuttle type stuff here. This is reflective heat tape. We get this on the bottom, and then the heat, instead of absorbing into there, gets reflected back out. I don't really know what kind of magic stuff is in this reflective tape, but if it's good enough for a NASA space shuttle, it's good enough for a Datsun. And then don't let that touch, just hold that end up. Anything we can do to prevent heat to those cars, we'll do it. Okay, so far so good.
I've been working on this fender on the 240Z, and progress has been a little slower than I thought.
How are you acting up today?
Japanese metal is completely different. It's just a way thinner gauge versus American cars, a lot thicker, it's more forgiving. This is a lot harder to weld. It's just really thin. This thin metal works very easy, so I have to be very careful how I work it. Metal has a bunch of molecules. So once you cut them, you stretch them, you want to try to bring them all back in. And that's why I'm hammering it all in the well, so it's less grinding, then it allows me to just form it and control the warpage. So the fender flares were mounted a little higher than we thought, so now I have to go back and weld up all those holes. It's a little tricky. Now I need to test fit the fender flares to see what gap we're working with. I was a little worried. They're just coming back together. Sweet. Yay. To get this fender prepped for paint, I need to do the bodywork and prime it.
We're making some really solid progress on this Z. Now it's time to address the valve cover. What I've done is drill out the threads because the big issue I always have with these, because they have to be TIG welded and it's aluminum, everything has to be really, really clean. So we're gonna get this valve cover powder coated, but to make it look even better, we're gonna get rid of all of these bungs on top of the valve cover that aren't being used anymore. This isn't so much of a functional detail as much as it is aesthetic, but because the valve cover is dead center in the motor, I want it to look as nice as possible. So this one I've got to make a small patch TIG weld that in, then grind it smooth again so that when we're done, they'll look like they were never there. When I build these engine bays, I treat the engine bay itself more like it's a work of art. So ideally, I would have a perfect size of aluminum rod that fit right in that hole and make my life real easy. TIG welding a 45-year-old oil-soaked valve cover is not my favorite thing to do. Holy moly. I hate doing these so much. When you're TIG welding aluminum, it has to be absolutely clean, so these valve covers are always a bit of a challenge for me. Ah. What the is going on? Something isn't right here. Ah, that's not good. To be continued, I guess. Ah, that's not good. It's an official blowout. So as I'm welding these patches, the coolant line blows on the welder. We've been making really good progress on this Z. I should have known something would come up. Cooling part of the torch decided to not want to hold in its fluid anymore. Yippee! So this one runs coolant through the torch to keep it cool, and apparently it's at the end of its lifespan. I've had lots of issues with these valve covers before, but this is a first. This blown line isn't a huge deal to fix. I just have to swap out the lines. Get it fired up and see if all the coolant is staying inside where it should be. Hopefully this is our last issue. Ah, working much better now. I was hoping my welder would have cooperated a little bit more, but now we can at least send it out to powder coat. The modifications we're making in the engine bay and the Z are really starting to bring this car to life. Been a minute since I've been in a proper 8.6. Back when I had mine was like late 90s and they were still like junkyard cars. Another part of what we do here is importing cars from Japan, whether or not it's for a restoration or sometimes we'll bring in cars for clients as well. The customer already had a restoration done on the car. Our job is to kind of just go over it, make sure that everything's good. This is like a dream build for an 86 for me, like all the best parts you can get. Toyota built 20 valve motor. Man. My connection to these cars goes back to when I was younger. My first one I actually bought as a winter car. Terrible idea, rear-wheel drive. On paper, they don't really seem that fantastic, you know, 125 horsepower, but behind the wheel, having a lightweight drivetrain, a high-revving twin-cam motor, limited slip, that's all you need to have fun, man. Definitely a little noisy in here. He's got some solid mounts all throughout it, you can tell. There's certain frequencies that just resonate through the chassis at certain RPMs, and that's the thing about stiff motor mounts and transmission mounts. For a race car, you want that drivetrain to not move whatsoever. And transmitting all that vibration to the chassis isn't a big deal. When you've got a helmet on and a roll cage, it doesn't matter. But in a street car, you're gonna get the panels buzzing. It may not be the most comfortable experience. Suspension is definitely on the firm side, but it soaks up the bumps pretty well. I mean, this is sort of the way most Japanese suspensions are. They've got really smooth roads over there. So check it out, man. This is my friend Massa's Levin that I talked to you about.
Wow.
So he was a friend of mine that I met through autocrossing back in the day. And
Nice.
we used to race together. He moved back to Japan and then got a job back here in the States, and he wanted to bring his car back with him. So,
Of course. Why would you leave this there? You can have one of the nicest examples in the country, probably.
the Toyota 11 is the Japanese market version of what we got here called the Corolla GTS. This car has become quite a cult classic in Japan, right around the time when drifting became really popular. It had the combination of front engine, rear-wheel drive, twin cam, high revving motor. You know, a lot of guys can drift a really high-powered car, but if you can drift 11 well, then you've got skill. Yeah, check it out. He's got this cool.
I love that tilt wheel.
I know.
It's nice for people like me that can't ever fit in these cars.
Bigger guys to get in there.
Wow, look at the dash, dude. I mean, it has a cage in it, like the back seat's still in it, all the plastics are perfect. It was very tastefully done.
I mean, it's perfect, man.
I love it. The cool thing about the 11 is that it's a compact car that's rear-wheel drive, it's sporty, it's fun.
Yeah. So as you know, this car would have normally had just a 16-valve 4AG, but this came from the later AE92, and it's a 20-valve, meaning 5 valves from cylinder, which is kind of cool stuff for the era. In stock configuration, that would have made around 160 horsepower, but he's turned the motor over to engine builder Toda in Japan, which has rebuilt this thing from the top to the bottom. Okay, well, I guess let's get in the shop and get it on the lift and give it a
nice once over.
Give it a once over. All right, so I think the idea with this one is he sent me a tachometer because his factory tach isn't working with that particular setup. And then he's got the car raised a little bit for transport, so we're gonna lower it back down to where he wants it.
Sometimes versus, local customers and full restorations, it's nice to just have a car that comes in that's really nice.
Let's pull the wheels so we can get the coilovers lowered back down to where they're supposed to be. He's made some blue marks here, and we're not making a huge ride height change. These are coilover suspension, which is pretty much the best way to go for a performance-oriented application like this. The cool thing about it is it gives you the ability to change the ride height up and down. It allows you to even the weight on all 4 corners, which makes it handle a lot better. We're gonna put them on his marks and take it from there. The wheels are nice and light, right? We get to lift these tiny little 13s and 14s.
So what we have here all the way from Japan is a lovely new tachometer. There are a few different versions of color for this one. This one's white, and it matches the already existing Duffy gauges in the center, but it's pretty easy to set up and calibrate and use. It should be nice. It's kind of more of like a Japanese build style. It goes with the car. You got like the tilt steering wheel, you have the little gauge panel under the radio, all that stuff. It's just kind of a 90s feel. I think it looks good. It's very traditional in the style, so it fits the car definitely.
So we've gone through and we've adjusted the suspension, we've installed our tachometer, and we've gone through and we've inspected the car. Just to make sure everything's right, I'm gonna take it for one last spin. Super responsive, lightweight flywheel, makes it easy to rev match. This is cool, man. Yeah, it feels pretty good. Maybe a little rowdy for a daily driver, but very well put together. It is by far the best example of this car I've ever seen. So we're making some really solid progress on the Z. We've got the wiring, carbs, and heat shields done. Next up, we're gonna get started on the dash.
Some gauges installed.
Yeah, I came in over the weekend, made this plate so that we could mount these gauges in there, and then I got the 3 center pods in too.
I like that, man. It's real clean. Very classic looking.
This is a restoration you could go plenty of different ways with. You could change everything, you can modernize everything, but for me, I like to keep the original spirit that these cars had, but improve upon that. Because we've changed out the transmission rear end of the car, we now have a GPS-based speedo, so we don't have to deal with speedometer changes. And then what's also nice is they have all the turn signals in the high beam. Green illumination, white needles, white numbers. So what we've done is we've taken out the original triple gauges in the center of the console, and we've added water temperature, oil pressure, and oil temperature. But those, man, I couldn't ask for those to fit better. They fit in there real nice. What we've done with our gauges is try to mimic the factory gauges as much as possible. So when you get back in the Z car, it still looks like a Z car, but we've got modern instrumentation. I guess what you gotta do is get the whole dash harness put in here. And then once we get all that done, we should be able to get this dash in the car.
A lot of times, these cars from Japan, unless they're specific, like a Skyline or something, a lot of the harnesses are the same.
So it looks like you got it all pretty much wrapped up in here. That looks nice, man. So yeah, let's get into place, and we'll finish up the rest of this. One thing about these Japanese cars is they're usually pretty small. These are always super fun to get to. Working up underneath the dash, never a comfortable situation.
My favorite bolts.
The challenge here is trying to get all these tiny little bolts up in this little area where you can barely even fit a screwdriver. So that should hold that side in. Neither Josh or myself are small people, so it doesn't make our task any easier.
Hey.
Hey, man.
From time to time, it gets uncomfortable working in these cars, especially in a two-door car. It's really tight, and it kind of gets like weird. This feels kind of like the scene from Ghost.
Can you do that again?
When they're doing the pot. And sometimes it's just like, you know, your personal space bubble gets popped. It's a little awkward. I guess you would be Patrick Swayze's Ghost. Rest in peace.
Dude, first time like sitting in the car and actually looking at the gauges, it looks pretty damn awesome. I like that a lot.
It's a nice choice with the 432 contrast.
I mean, the old gauges are cool, but these will be so much more precise, and they still look like the old gauges. I dig it, man. So far on the Z, we've wired the engine harness, installed the triple carb setup, built the heat shield, and installed the gauges. Now we're gonna focus on the rear end of the car.
So these are the factory Series 1 or 2 taillights. This is what they call a Euro style. And the cool thing about the Euro style, especially like I like it on cars that are still using the side markers, because you get that nice little accent of amber versus just all red. So taking into consideration that we're doing kind of a more of a Japanese market theme with this car, the amber tail lights are definitely a nice add. This is painted black to match a lot of the accents of the car. This is going to be kind of like a monochromatic build. So it's a nice touch, I think.
So what we're putting on here is the rear spoiler for the car. And this is from the Japanese market 432 model. Fairlady Z is what they called it. In America, this car was referred to as the 240Z, but in Japan, it was referred to as the Fairlady Z. So with this car, we're going more with Japanese market styling cues, which would be the difference in badging, the taillights, the fender mirrors, to make it a little more unique than what was offered here in the States. In my opinion, especially if you're going with the front air dam, you're going to want to go with the rear as well. Not only for aesthetic purposes, but you are changing the aerodynamic profile of the car. So anytime you want to add downforce in the front, you want to add that also in the rear. You want to be able to equalize that in conjunction with each other so you don't have an unbalanced aero situation there. That looks good, man. It's hard to know, until you get everything in place, but that's definitely one part of the puzzle, right? The rear of the car looks fantastic. The taillights look great, the spoiler looks great, the surround looks great. But the part of the rear of the car that does not look so good is the way the exhaust is fitting. I think obviously next thing to do now is get this exhaust fitting right.
Exactly, we gotta get it centered in there.
So let's bring it up in the air. So our main issue is really with the tail end of it. I mean, the important thing is we have to have that centrally mounted in the car. So we've got to make some changes here. Let's loosen the rear flange first and figure out which end needs to be adjusted. It's only a little bit off, but when you're a little bit off in the front of the car, that translates to a big misalignment towards the rear. See if we can get that flat, and then we may have to weld in 2 little pie cuts here. I'm hoping this will be a quick fix, but we'll start cutting and we'll see where it goes. We've got a really nice system here, so we're trying not to hack it up too much, but we definitely need to make sure that we get the fit that we're looking for. So now we're gonna get it up and see if the cuts we've made are deep enough to where it'll spread like I want it to. How's it looking like?
If I let go,
still
it's
got it,
against
okay.
the car.
Maybe more than just a bend. It seems like it's also a little bit of a rotation, so. I was hoping this would be a little bit more simple than that, but it seems like we're probably going to have to just cut this all the way. I made my small cuts, hoping that would do what I wanted, but it's looking like it's a lot more misaligned than I had initially thought. So now we're just gonna have to cut the whole thing in half and figure out what to do in between those two. So now we're gonna get a real look at how far off we are. A little bit of a bad feeling that it's gonna be a little more than I would like. It already is. Everything that seems like it might be a bolt-on scenario rarely ever is. We're not looking good. not looking good. I just have to figure out how to make everything happy. We're making some solid progress on the Z, but unfortunately we've come across a slight problem with the exhaust system. So with the exhaust level, mid-pipe, centered up exactly where we want it, you can see the misalignment we have here, which is, you know, something big enough that I can, can fit your thumb in it. It's not good. It's more work than I anticipated, but it's got to be done. What we're gonna have to do is completely cut both pipes and add a couple of small bends in there and TIG weld them back together to get the alignment we're looking for. Let me get this front one in first against the body here. So we still got good clearance on the resonator here. It's tucked up as high as it can be. Hangers are still straight. And most importantly, this is now level and perfectly centered up in that exit. So that's what we're looking for. Unfortunately, it took a little bit of cutting and welding to get there, but I think we're finally good to go. Yeah, buddy.
We are painting the Z fender. We're gonna blend where we did the repair and go to town. Got the bodywork done, primed them, but this is gonna be the tricky part because if you don't mix it right, you're not gonna get the result that you want. I've spent hours trying to get these fenders perfect, just trying to nail the color dead on. I like going in the paint booth and painting. I zone out everything and I just focus and I do what I do. I'm stoked. I think the match looks good. So now I just bake it and take it up to Eric's and put it on the Z and see if it matched good.
Late last night, I was able to get the catch can routed. I got all the fittings done. Fuel lines are done all the way back to the tank now. Oil cooler's done. We now have a radiator with the shroud and the fan. Getting the engine fired and getting the carbs tuned is our next big challenge. Never fired this motor, never used these carbs before, but hopefully we'll get this thing running by the end of the day.
That'd be awesome.
Let's get some oil in it. So the first step is to get all the fluids in the car and make sure there's no leaks. So far, so good.
It's a big day for us. I'm excited to get this engine fired. I did definitely drink my coffee this morning, and I'm ready to go. I'm like espresso shaky, so it just looks like.
All the fuel is still inside the tank. That's good.
Well, car's not full of gas, so that's cool.
The next step is to get this throttle linkage sorted. This is the stock throttle linkage. As you can see, it's a little bit too long, so I'm just making my measurements for how much that needs to be taken down. So the reason for modifying the linkage is that where the linkage attaches to the carburetor is different on this triple carb setup. I don't think any parts come for these cars you don't have to modify. It's just part of the nature of the build. When we get to these parts of the build, it's rare that anything bolts on without some sort of modification. And it really turns into a domino effect. When we make one small change, it turns into another. Got the linkage all welded up. I'm gonna see if it actually fits like I want it to. And that looks like we're good. Linkage is done, exhaust is done, fluids are in the car, so now it's a moment of truth. We're gonna make sure we're getting spark. We know we got fuel here. So I'm gonna keep an eye in 12 different places while we start it and see how it goes. Just like a lot of these builds, when you've had your hands on every single part of it, there's a little bit of nerves involved on the first startup.
My only concern with this fire-up is just the distributor being bad, and they're usually terrible out of the box, like 90% failure rate. As of now, there's only one company that will remanufacture these distributors, and there aren't a lot left, really, because we live in the future and these cars are in the past.
So let's just give it a quick crank and make sure that we've got spark.
Nothing? Is it powering?
It's powering, it's got 12 volts right now. So we've got power to the matchbox, but still no spark. It's gotta be a distributor issue. Swap distributors? Do we have another one?
I think we do have one.
One thing about our shop is that we keep everything. We tend to hoard. Let's see if there's more up here.
Just never know when you need it.
Because these parts are hard to come by, we tend to keep everything from past builds. So it's time to dig into the box of spares and see if we can find a replacement. If that one's not good, likelihood of us getting another one in here is probably not good either.
Dead?
Nothing.
Of course it is.
That's now 2 distributors that are bad straight out of the box. The coil we did have, we used in this car. So our only option at this point is to pillage one of the other cars we have here just to see if we can get this car up and running. We don't have a whole lot of options right now.
So right now, because this car runs, I'm gonna steal this distributor, which is also a Matchbox, but it's an OG one, so it works pretty well. This is an old part. It's all oxidized. Seems old. Okay, let's see. Ready? Yep.
So we're out here today with our 1973 Datsun 240Z that we restored here at JDM Legends. I really love these Z cars. I mean, you know, this is a sports car, a true sports car. Very driver-oriented cockpit, you know, a 2-seater, you've got that long sloping hood. It's kind of everything that you want in a sports car. We actually found this car in a shed in Salt Lake City. Kind of gave me the opportunity to build my dream Z for somebody else. We did a full frame-up restoration, you know, fine balance between something that's streetable, but also something you could take to the track. Engine-wise on this car, we stuck with the L-Series motor, we stuck with the straight 6, and we also are still keeping it carbureted. Originally, this car would be a 2.4 liter, made about 150 horsepower. We've increased the displacement to a 3.2 liter. I mean, having this 3.2 liters of displacement, we really have power almost anywhere in the power band. There's plenty of torque to get this car where it needs to be. Lots of headwork, big cam. At the end of the day, this thing makes 320 horsepower, which is more than double what it came from in the factory. Suspension in this car, you can track it, but it's also pretty civil on the street. You know, with the valving and the spring rates we've got in this car, it really soaks up the bumps well. We've got 4-piston vented brakes up front, and we also did a rear disc brake conversion in the rear. If I could pick any wheel for a Z car, it has to be the Watanabe. You know, we stepped it up a notch, and these are actually magnesium wheels, which, you know, definitely adds to the performance factor. The thing handles crazy. You know, I like this car so much because it's got that great 70s styling. It's a true sports car. It's got that amazing profile. Never gets old. Never gets old.
Because this car runs, I'm gonna steal this distributor.
So after trying 2 distributors that were bad out of the box, we're down to the last one in the shop that we can use.
We went through 1 distributor, nothing. We tried their other spare, which was rebuilt, also nothing. But this one's from a running car, and it's probably about 30 years old, so.
Theoretically. Because as you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of shops in Utah carrying 40-year-old Datsun parts on shelves. This is our last option.
Ready?
Yep. Okay.
Holy shit, it's like 4.5 bar. That's really good.
Yeah, man. Well, it runs. Getting the engine fired is a huge milestone for this car, so hopefully it's all downhill from here. So Mauricio's back with the fenders. I can't wait to see how they look.
It's hot. What's up, guys?
Got me some better fenders, huh?
We're there. They look nice.
Yeah, they look good in here. Believe it or not, white is the most difficult color to deal with because there's so many shades. I'm cautiously optimistic that I think we got this color match perfect. They look good, man. I think it might be the shiniest spot on the whole car right now.
Maybe.
And so this is pretty much a blend.
Yeah. So this is the original color here.
Yeah.
Here. So this is where I blended it.
So I guess the question now is see if they match the rest of the car, right?
Yeah, that is a big question.
Only one way to know.
Let's lower it and put it on. Let's
Okay.
see how good we got. Between bodywork and paint, I got about 15 hours into these fenders. The last thing I want to do is repaint this car. I just hope the paint match is perfect. I tried to stay back as much as I could so I wouldn't compromise the rest of the fender. I'm my worst critic, I swear. I'm super tough on myself because I want everything perfect on everything I do.
Perfect.
Awesome, dude.
Looks just like it did before I sent them to you, actually.
That was the main thing, is trying to keep that old paint so we can match still all the edges of the fender, the cowl, and then the hood, you know.
Yeah.
You guys like it? Yes, good.
I love
Got a
it.
pool,
No, it
good?
looks great.
So the fender looks great. I'm happy, Mauricio's happy, and Josh is really happy. Or about as happy as Josh gets.
Are you sure you like it?
That's Josh's happy face right there. You can't tell, but he's happy.
I think the paint match is great. Just because I don't have a huge smile on my face doesn't mean I don't like it.
I think it's gonna look really good.
Yeah, let's make it permanent.
Let's put it all up and start bolting it up. So that's feeling good. See, that's perfect.
These are kind of hard to stab.
We're using these Hella H4s. To most people, they're gonna look like original headlights, which is what I like about them. It's one of those little detail pieces, and because we've got so little interior in this thing, the interior that we do have, we want it to be as nice as possible. I think it's coming together pretty good, man.
I have to agree. There's like moments where I look at it and it kind of like turns into my bed, and then it turns back into a Z. So I kind of need some sleep, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. It looks nice.
Well, we got a running car, so I appreciate the effort, man.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Daniel's gonna be stoked on it. I think he's gonna be real happy.
So I just got into Salt Lake right now. I'm in this empty parking lot, but I'm waiting for Eric to pull up in the Z any minute now. It's a big day. I mean, obviously I got a call from Eric to say, come on down. We're gonna take a look at the car. So, I mean, I jumped on my first flight that I could out to Salt Lake. So I'm excited. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I'm in this empty parking lot, waiting for Eric to pull up in the Z any minute now. Start hearing the car maybe before we start seeing the car. That would be kind of cool. Oh, wow. Holy. Oh man, this is exactly what I wanted.
What's up, Daniel?
Holy cow, dude. Oh my gosh.
What do you think, man?
Dude, unreal.
I could have picked him up at the shop and we could have pulled it out here, but I think there's something special about seeing the car actually drive up, hearing it drive up. How's it going, man?
Good
to see
seeing you. Oh my gosh. That look right there, that was it. That's what made me fall in love with the Z, and here it is.
Do you want to go for a spin?
I would love to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me hop in. I'll show you the ropes here.
Okay. Sounds so good.
Right. We now have 5 speeds instead of 4.
That's right, that's right.
And then we went from the dual carb setup to a triple carb
That's
setup.
right.
And show you what these sound like.
Oh, sounds so good. This sound is really, truly intoxicating. I mean, there's something very unique about it, and it's unlike anything I've ever driven. It just has enough power to have fun with and enjoy.
That was a cop. I'm gonna test those brakes. From the smile I saw, it looks like he enjoyed it as much as I did. I think it's a cool way to really get his first impression of what we did for him.
This is everything that we were looking for. Now, I feel like we haven't stripped the soul out of the car of a 70s era car.
You heard the exhaust, obviously, but that's that stacked twin pipe exhaust.
It's so unique, you know what I mean? I didn't realize that the exhausts were stacked like that, but as I did some research, it sounded like it was just specific, you know what I mean? And I said, whatever exhaust we end up sourcing, it's gotta look like this.
Yeah. What I think is so cool, especially about the early Zs and why I love the early Zs so much, is those nice, thin, smooth bumpers.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you get in an accident, probably not ideal, but...
It looks clean though. It looks clean, it looks great.
And I think he did a really good job on the choice of wheels, especially when we're talking about something that can actually fit those brakes, but not be, you know, some gigantic wagon wheel on the car.
And the overflares look great. I know we had some issues with it positioning correctly, and we had some issues with sort of the ride height, but this looks great. I mean, it doesn't look too aggressive. It doesn't look, you know what I mean?
And like, you know, I mean, key to any car looking good is having that proper wheel to fender clearance. We did the dash restoration, which a little bit better than a cap, right?
A lot better than the cap. I mean, the cap, you got a lot of distortion, a lot of the warping. I don't see that. I mean, for a car that's obviously restored to this level, the last thing you want to know is that you've cut some corners in unnecessary places. All the OEM stuff, you know, like the shift knob, the steering wheel, the dash. You know, when I first took delivery of the original car, I mean, some of the needles weren't working, the lights were burnt out. And I said, look, we're gonna have to update these gauges, but how can we do it without really modernizing? You know, so it looks OEM. And Eric was able to go out there and source these great gauges. It's just such a good balance of new and old. I think that's a testament to a well-built resto mod, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of different ways we could build these Z cars, and what I really liked about Daniel is he had, you know, a similar perspective of how he thinks the car should be, and I think that's why he came to us. It's where all the magic happens up here, man.
It still looks so clean, so clean.
I treat the underside of the hood just like the rest of the car. You gotta make this kind of a work of art.
The Z has such a unique presentation when it comes to the motor. It opens up to like what feels like an art reveal.
I treat each one of these cars as if I'm building my own Z car. If I had to build a white Z, it would look exactly like that.
Well, it's been a long journey, man. And to see where it's gone from it, you know, delivery to here now, it's unbelievable the work that you guys do.
It all just kind of came together, and man, I wish I could keep it. You want to get rid of it, Dave?
Not after 4.5 years of waiting. This thing's got to go back to California as soon as possible, man.
Well, I guess you probably want to drive it too, right?
Yeah, let's do that at least, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's this rush of emotion. You sit in the car, you have your hands around the wheel, and really just to be able to kind of get it out of that parking lot and just rip around that first turn and just really kind of open up the throttle. It's a really satisfying feeling. Oh, this feels so good. Oh, I love the smell. I'm sure it's not good for me, but
Yeah.
the sound, the smell, the feel, it's all part of the package.
I don't care what anybody else thinks. The only thing that matters to me is what Daniel thinks. And from what I gather, he seems to be pretty happy with it. So that makes me happy.
This was definitely worth the wait.
Yeah?
I can honestly say that now I officially own a JDM Legend in my garage. This feels just right. I don't know how else to say it, man.